Welcome to our last board meeting of the month. It's Wednesday, March 28th. We'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'd all please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our mission statement says that Richmond Schools, in partnership with the community, will help all children believe in themselves, respect others, and experience the joy of learning. Through effective teaching, children will first learn the basic skills, including thinking skills, using words, numbers, and ideas. In addition, children will be given the opportunity to learn more of what they want and need to know. Adults will model behavior that will teach children to resolve conflicts successfully, take risks with new ideas, and understand that they can err without being judged. Our board vision says that Richmond Community Schools will be a high-performing, well-respected public school system that will make the community proud. Excellent student achievement, graduation rate, and attendance will be our hallmarks. On to public commentary. The Board of School Trustees recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on corporation matters. We want to ensure that the public feels welcome and that the concerns are answered in a timely, efficient manner. The following protocol has been established. The board has set aside 2 30-minute periods for public comment during each meeting. The maximum time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. The board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. The president reserves the right to interrupt the speaker when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or if it interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process available in Policy 9130. Do we have anyone signed up?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. I guess that made that whole statement moot then. On to snapshots of success.
We have 2 snapshots of success, but they're not quite what the agenda says. The first one will be recognition of our Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year, but the second one is Disability Awareness Month. We've had an unexpected change of plans, and we would like to move that for recognition at a meeting in April. But I would like to reserve that same spot, 4.02, for introduction of new staff. So at that point, we'll ask for a new staff person to be recognized. But for right now, 4.01, I'd like to comment that every year the Boys and Girls Club has a Youth of the Year competition. And the Youth of the Year is all about selection of a student or a member of the club who emphasizes or exemplifies, I should say, the highest ideals of the club. And this year, I had the privilege of serving on that committee, and I can tell you that the committee reviewed some of the finest applicants that we have had in years. We always have a good one, but this was a very, very competitive field this year. And tonight we have the privilege of having our Wayne County Boys and Girls Club Youth of the Year, Ricky Fonseca, who is a student at our high school, and he will be he'll be going to competition for the State Youth of the Year, presenting a speech there in competition, and tonight you're going to hear what may very well be the speech that he uses to compete at the state level. So, Ricky, I'd like to introduce you to the board and our administration, welcome you to our board meeting, and turn the podium over to you.
Okay. When my grandma bought me my first club card, she saved my life. That might sound like a good line, like a Youth of the Year ought to say, but to me, it is real. I was 6 years old. My brother and my sister and I were beaten almost every day by my mom. Sometimes she didn't even feed us, and we had to steal money from her to buy ourselves food. My father tried to help, but his way of helping was to beat my mom. Even if your mother treats you as bad as mine did, you still have to love her. It hurts outside when you're being beaten, but to see your parents fight hurts deep down, and it doesn't go away. My name is Ricky Fonseca. That's a picture of my life when I was 6 years old. And like I said, my grandma bought me my first club card. Before that, I only had my grandparents to turn to for safety. Now, I have the club. That was the beginning of how my life was saved. What I remember about my first days at the club was the unit director, James Gordon. When someone paid attention to me, it wasn't for good reasons. So when James pulled me aside and asked me if I wanted to go have lunch with him, I was shocked. What a great experience that was for me. For one of the first times I felt welcome. I felt like I belonged somewhere. I found somewhere where I could trust people. And all James did was pay attention to me. From that time on, I always felt loved at the club. The staff always cared about me, but I never told anyone about my family. The next few years at home were bad. Beatings and abuse continued. My grandparents helped, but they couldn't take us away from our parents. My father was in and out of jail. My mother tried to leave him and ended up kidnapping us and taking us to Arizona. But eventually, my dad got us back, and my mother stopped being a part of my life. During those hard times, the club remained one of the good places in my life. As I got older, I continued being involved in what the club offered. Like always, all I needed was attention. Many of the staff members had their part in helping me, but one, Shane Hillard, stood out more than most. One day at the club, I was walking in the gym with Shane. It was winter, and I was about to leave. He asked me if I had a coat. I didn't. The next thing I knew, Shane took off his new black suede fur-lined coat and handed it to me. "Here, take it," was all he said. From that day on, Shane was like a second father to me. He gave me clothes when I needed them. He invited me to his home where I had nowhere else to go. And he treated me like his own son. But mostly, he did what the club does best. He paid attention to me. Still, I never told him about my home life. So what inspired me to finally tell people about my home life? This might sound strange, but it is a Youth of the Year competition. 2 years ago, Shane interviewed me for my first Youth of the Year. When he asked me about my home life, the stories started coming out, and I broke through a barrier that I didn't know existed. Once the staff really knew who I was and where I came from, our relationships grew. They taught me to look forward to what my future can bring. Now, I have 2 goals in life. The first is to obtain a degree in construction engineering. And later on in my life, I would like to return to school and become an elementary school teacher to help mold the next generation. I want to be able to give back to my community, but something even better is happening. I work for the club as a junior staff. Now I am the one who can give back to what I've been given. If I see kids who look like they have trouble hidden inside, I know how to show them that they are welcome and loved. And all I have to do is pay attention to them. Thank you.
I told you we had friendly
Back up to the
eyeballs.
podium for a second.
And I also told the rest of
Thank
the
you
board they
for
needed
your
Kleenex.
talk, and you're quite an inspiration and a wonderful role model, and I know other board members would have questions they might ask you.
Well, I would like, as you're thinking of your questions, to let you know that he's in connection with our reorganization project, and specifically with the renovation project at Hibbard.
Oh, fabulous.
Yes.
Oh, the construction?
Yes.
He has been working in the halls to help us do the demolition task and has been part of that great crew, so.
Is that through our high school here?
Building
Say, I
trades
heard you
class.
guys are.
Uh-huh.
kicking it over there is what I heard. You're doing a good job, so.
Well, so what can we do to help you for the next step? What do you have to do? Do you know what's the next part of this whole contest?
I just have to practice harder, get my speech down, and work on my interviews.
When is the?
April 20th.
April 20th, okay.
And with whom do you interview? We don't,
The judges, I don't know who yet.
okay. Well, you did a really nice job.
Bob?
I happened to hear it
Didn't
yesterday.
you serve as a judge one
Yes,
year?
I was a judge a couple of years ago at the state level in Indianapolis. They bring all the local winners in for a day-long interview.
How many others were interviewed from here at the club?
Oh, from here?
Yeah.
David, didn't we have like 6? Did we interview 6 people this year?
We had 6 finalists, and we started with 14 kids. We got round 2. We
Yeah.
actually
Wow.
had more to start with.
Good.
And they all could have been Youth of the Year as far as I'm concerned. Ricky was
Tough process.
outstanding.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Good luck to you at the state.
And let us know, okay?
Yeah, we need to know.
So, I got
For the next introduction, I would like to remind the board that we had posted the opening for assistant principal at Test Middle School. And Test has organized a search committee. There's been an interview process, and tonight, I'm not sure which one will be doing it, but we have Mrs. Spicer here and Mr. Mops, and maybe I need to call both of them to the podium, and they can make the introduction or tell you what the process has been so that we come to you tonight with an introduction.
Cool.
Well, first I'll introduce the new principal. This is Mr. Mops, and he's taking over, and Test is in able hands.
We created a team. We had quite a few applicants that we went through, and we sorted out through the resumes that we received, and we narrowed it to, I believe, right around 10. From those 10, and we shared that with the team. We had Mrs. Spicer, myself, Mr. Norse, our counselor, and 2 teacher representatives. We narrowed it down to about a dozen. From that dozen, we probably narrowed it down to 8 or 9. And from them, we interviewed all of those 8 or 9 candidates, and one definitely stuck out. And so we thought we needed to talk to her again. And so she came back, and we went through some scenarios with her, and she did a very good job and nailed them. And so we were thrilled to be able to offer her the position of assistant principal at Test Middle School, and we're thrilled that she accepted. Do you want me to introduce her and bring her up now? It's Nicole Bevins Vandervoort, and if she would like to come up.
Oh, nice.
So this is Nicole, and you can shout out any questions.
They didn't tell me you were asking questions till I got here, so.
We wanted her to have a good day, so.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm from this area originally. I grew up just across the line in Ohio and went to school at Indiana Wesleyan University for my undergrad and have been teaching for 9 years at Delta Middle School in Muncie and just finished my last projects for my administrative license through Ball State.
Questions?
She comes highly regarded by her search committee there at Test.
This is a great school. I'm sure you'll.
I'm
Great
thrilled to get
asset.
started.
So what drew you to middle school?
That's an interesting question. I actually did a lot of student teaching in middle school, and then I went to high school level, and I got a chance to sub from kindergarten through 12th grade, and middle school has always been the place where I felt like I was most comfortable. I like the age of the kids, which some people tell you when you work at middle school, oh gosh. But I love it because they're at a great age where you can start to mold things that they're going to learn later and keep with them later in life, and that's one of my greatest joys is to work with kids at a really impressionable age.
Aaron?
We've had a lot of successes under the leadership at Tess over the last number of years, and losing a piece of that at the end of this year. What assets are you going to bring to the table to continue the successes or even enhance them?
Some of my specialties includes working with the special education population. I have a lot of experience as a co-teacher and working in case conferences and working with IEPs in the special ed community. So I think that will be one of my greatest assets to the middle school. I know you have an increasing student population in special education, so I hope I can help there the most.
I
Other
don't want to
questions?
ask her too many questions. She's went through all the interviews. And I have total faith that they would select the right
Yes.
candidate, so.
Well, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. You'll recognize on the consent agenda, we will add her name. It didn't make it for the consent agenda itself, but we'll add that to the Human Resources recommendation.
So we
Can
talked
do
to
it
her
now?
before we hired her.
Can we just do it now?
On to reports and discussion topics. Mr. Coddington.
Oh, we're learning the.
Good evening. Before you tonight, the earliest we've had it in the 8 years that I've been here is our financial facts for the board. And I left multiple copies for everyone. And why don't we take a moment to go over some financial facts, which I think bring to light, again, some of the master planning that we've done. Number one, I want to say that in July, thought we'd bring a tax rate in at 66 cents. We brought it in at 64.27. So we're lower than that. If our tax rate went up 50%, it would be 4 cents lower than the lowest competitor in East Central Indiana. If it went up 50%. We are the lowest tax rate and the best value in education for the local taxpayers in East Central Indiana, and the 5th lowest in the state of Indiana. Always take an opportunity. The other thing that you can see, that if you take last year's out, that our assessed value did go down another $50 million. Our enrollment has gone down 78 students, which we know that. And but our local and state support stays about 8218. If we turn over on the other side, and this was our fall enrollment, and you see that we've got some K-6 buildings with an ADM count of 201, 203, 210. This is not an efficient way to run an organization, as we have declining enrollment, and we're being proactive with the master plan of making those buildings more efficient. So I've got more of these copies. Share them with your friends. I was at lunch today. Gave one to every person that I went to, because again, when they start talking about education, we want the financial facts to back up what they are. And I'm very proud of the corporation that I work for and the financial viability of it. As we start this month, and Dr. Boroff asked me to say that next month, as we finish our first quarter, will be my last monthly presentation.
Uh-oh.
That I've been asked, that it is so riveting that they want me to make sure that the people can only be on the edge of their seats so long that I do this on a quarterly basis. So I will give a quarterly update in May, and I will come back with another riveting July presentation for our second
know. We
quarter.
can wait.
And
Could we ask for one ahead of time, in
If we miss you, if we miss it.
thank you. February results. Our revenue's down $65,000. Loss of state funding due to 78 less students. Our expenditures are up $331,000. And that's because last February we had an insurance holiday and saved about $500,000 that we didn't make in a contribution. This month, in February, we made our $500,000 contribution. Not a surprise, that was in our forecast. We knew where we were at. But let's look at where we are year to date. Our year to date, we have a good projection here. You can see year to date that our revenue is down $117,000, and that trend will continue all year long because of a loss of funding and the loss of students. But if you look at our expenditures over 2 months, including the holiday, so that's a $500,000, our expenditures are down $360,000. Those are the adjustments that we've made since last August that we're putting in there. Again, should give us all confidence as we move forward that we're going to have a balanced budget in 2012, as we've been directed by not only our board, but by the state of Indiana. As we look at where the month and where we are year to date, where we project to end the year, and we've had a change. One of the changes that we've had is the all-day kindergarten grant. Remember, the state ended up with $300 extra million than they thought, and the state for the second year of their financials, which is 2012-13, has stated that we want to give $80 million more of that to all-day kindergarten. So they've increased the all-day kindergarten funding from last year's $1,234 to $2,400, or basically $1,200 a student. $1,200 a student for the average that we have 400 new incoming students at $1,200 each will give us about $440,000 more in December. That you see here in our increase. We're going to get $1 million of our $2 million in other income in the month of December. That $400,000, as you've been seeing, a $282,000, $250,000 deficit, has now brought our year to a plus $212,000. But I want to put in mind that as of right now, that's one-time money, because the finances for the state it's not put in a formula, it's put in an appropriation. So we anticipate at the next legislative session that they will put it as part of the formula. It will be ongoing money, ongoing revenue, but we're not there yet. So that's where we're going to end the year positive. We said we will. We will. But one thing I want to bring attention to that Dr. Borff and I talked about yesterday, with the new state law that you're only allowed to spend, I'm going to get over here. You see that appropriation number right there? $36,803,000. That is our projected income before they made the change with all-day kindergarten. So we're going to get $37,185,000 in revenue this year is what we anticipate, but we only have the authority to spend $36,803,000. So should we decide that we want to spend that extra $400,000 this year, we would have to go and add, for something we're both being very familiar with, an additional appropriation. If we do an additional appropriation in December, when we get them, after we receive the money, we won't have time to have a public hearing in 4 weeks. And the public hearing and doing this. If we ask for a public hearing and additional appropriation before we get the money, they will say we don't have the revenue to support the additional appropriation in the general fund. An interesting dilemma that we might be in. But that's all right, because we don't plan on spending that money at this point in time.
But at the end of the year, if we don't have the appropriation, we would still transfer that balance into the rainy day fund, correct?
Thank you for the lead-in question, Mr. Slifer, because let's look what that will look like at the end of the year in our income and expense analysis.
Ma'am. And Mr. Cottington?
Yes.
I couldn't find the answer to this question. In years past, kindergarten students have only counted half,
Yes.
correct?
And that's in the formula.
Well, so with the state recognizing that full-day kindergarten is important, when are they going to change the formula to include kindergarten kids as full people, rather than, you see what I'm?
Yeah, very much so. That's what they're hoping to do in the next legislative session.
Next year.
But even at that, now, Now, let's add the money, and I'm very pleased that we're getting $400,000.
I
When
understand
someone
that.
gives you something, you say thank you. But we get $6,300 for every student. Half of 6,300, I believe, is 3350, yeah, like that. You add the
I'm glad you're
24
doing-
to it, we're still not at full funding
Exactly.
for all-day kindergarten
Exactly.
with an extra $400,000.
And so if they honor a full kindergarten student, then they have to put it in the formula. And it's a catch-22 for them, but I just want folks to recognize that the number on our card may look fewer students than the number we
That's
actually
correct.
have in terms of bodies in the seats.
That is correct. Very briefly, we'll look in and say, where does 2012 look? You can see we've got the same revenue line, 37,185.
Even with big.
We have the expenditures that I put in our year end, but here's the master planning cuts. And we had a lengthy meeting earlier this week with the cabinet and Dr. Boroff to say, how are we doing on our master planning financial cut? And we are right on target to being where we need to be. And when we bring that target home, now you will see that $448,000, Mr. Slifer, sweep to the rainy day fund, giving us a cash balance of 0 this year, and giving then the board total control of the rainy day fund for an appropriation that we could make in any manner that we would want in 2013. With 2013 then, with these cuts that are projected, we have a balanced budget, and in 2014, we show a modest loss of $54,000. But I'm feeling every week more confident on where we are financially to have a balanced budget in 2012, but more importantly, a balanced budget in 2013. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll be glad to entertain any questions one might have.
Questions?
According to this presentation, I mean, you have a balanced budget for 2013 right now.
Yes, 2014 is a modest,
Oh, you're
okay.
modest 54.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Way back up there.
Gonna miss you guys.
Now, we'll still get the monthly
You're still under
reports,
action
though,
on
right?
it, you know.
They'll still have the monthly reports emailed to us then? And
We-
the updates or something?
We will not be doing monthly updates.
Okay.
We'll be doing the quarterly updates.
These will be in your board packet every month, though.
You still plan to, oh,
Yeah.
that's that sheet,
Yeah,
yes.
Say, I was,
all the sheets will be done monthly.
okay.
You just missed my riveting presentation.
Hey, it wasn't my vote, Bob.
Mr. Cottington, donations, receipt of donations, please.
Tonight, we ask the board to accept the following donations: from Walmart to Richmond Community Schools, labels for education purchasing; from Hills Pet Nutrition to Vale Elementary for field trips; from Harvest Land Co-op to Richmond High School for the Student Council; from Stigl Bearhide Orr Funeral Home, Richmond Symphony Orchestra, Paul Lengel, Civic Hall Associates, Reed Hospital, First Bank Richmond, Mayor Management, Ray Wolpe, Barb Bergdahl, Ron Cross, all to the RHS Drama and Music Department for the Red Devil Players for their outstanding musical, Oklahoma. From J. Roderick Weiss to RHS Athletics, a donation to the boys' basketball camp and to the RHS Athletic Fund. From Ann Black Schwindener, RHS Athletics, a donation to the Boys and Girls Swimming Camp Fund. From Scioto Xi Sorority to Civic Hall, the proudly presenting series annual giving campaign, we ask the board to accept these very generous donations of $4,550.55.
Do I have a motion to accept the donations as presented? Jeff Slifer makes the motion and Linda Morgeson seconds the motion. Any comments or questions concerning the donations? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On to permission to advertise for a public hearing for the Capital Projects Fund.
Okay, as we continue the process, the last month, we spent a month appropriating additional appropriations for the capital project fund. This month, we will follow that procedure, and I'm asking permission to advertise a notice to taxpayers of a public hearing to present an amended 2012 CPF plan for Richmond Community Schools. It has been determined that it is now necessary to amend the plan, now that we have an additional appropriation, to accommodate the changes for master plan. This public hearing will be on April 11th, 2012, at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Therefore, it is recommended that the board approve the request to advertise a notice to taxpayers of a public hearing to present an amended 2012 Capital Projects Fund plan.
Do I have a motion? Aaron Stevens makes the motion. Second. Suzanne Darengowski seconds the motion. Comments and questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we have permission to advertise bids for the Smartboard interactive whiteboards.
And we turn to Mr. Tidrow for that presentation.
Thank you. As a way to continue our progress of outfitting our K through 6 classrooms, we're asking the board to allow us to advertise to accept bids for Smartboard interactive whiteboards. The notice to the bidders will be published Friday, March 30th, and Friday, April 6th in the Palladium item. We'll have that proof of publication held on file in the Business Affairs Office. All the bids and bid documents received will be on file in the Office of the Technology Coordinator. We will analyze the bids, and we anticipate that there will be a recommendation made at the April 25th board meeting. So therefore, as a recommendation, that the board approves the request to advertise the notice to accept bids for Smartboard interactive whiteboards.
Do I hear a recommendation?
I'll move that we accept the
Pat Heine
recommendation.
makes a motion, and Linda Morgeson seconds the motion. Are there comments and questions? Jeff?
Two questions. One, will this completely outfit us K through 6 in all of our elementary buildings now with our smart boards?
It'll do elementary, intermediate, as well as the New Hibbard outfitting for the K through 6.
So every classroom up
Right,
through
based on the
6
numbers we
will
have now, yes.
And the last time we
Through
did this,
Through 8? He said
oh,
intermediate?
through 8. I
No.
thought you said
K
6.
through 6 right now.
Yeah, K
Oh,
through
okay, I
6.
thought you said
Even
intermediate.
in the
I
intermediate.
got you.
Last time, you had come back and asked the board, because of the policy our board policy of 75,000, do you expect it to be under or over?
It'll be over. That's why we're asking for the bid process.
So then we'll be expected to waive the board policy at their next meeting then? So. And what,
Whenever
this is the-
Neola comes back.
Pardon me?
Waiting on Neola's. He's asking, are we going to be bringing a request to raise the bid list to a state-approved 150? And it's not, it will come through the normal processes with Neola, am I correct?
And that may be one of our policies. I can't remember if that's one of our policies in process of being revised right now. That
It
will
is.
come to you at the same time.
Yes.
But I think for the purposes that you're talking about, you're going to have to do the waiver.
okay, so it's going
One
to
more
be
time.
over 75 but under 150 then?
It'll be over, actually 150. It'll be
Okay.
over 150.
That's why we're bidding this.
That's what we're bidding this, so.
It's over 150, we're bidding this, we're going.
What is your projected cost? I mean, I know you don't have your bids, but.
Right. We're going to ask for 55 smart boards to be bid, so I don't know if I want to give the number of our budget
I understand.
publicly at this point.
We
but-
could go back and,
Right, we will we'll specify smart board brand. I know there's several different interactive whiteboards out there, and we want to stick with the smart board for that curriculum consistency across the district. So the teacher transfers or students ensure they see the same outfit, so.
so then I guess the other follow-up question with that is our intent for this to mostly come out of our capital projects or Title I or?
Title I.
It'll
that's
be
the last
all
one.
Title I?
Right.
Okay.
Other comments and questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Now we get to talk about the third grade academy.
And Mr. Millis will make the presentation on this.
We have received an alternate bid for the the third grade summer reading academy from the Every Child Can Read Foundation. They've made the alternate proposal for third graders who will be not passing I-STEP or the iRead 3. If you know the history, that typically has been the grade level in which they have worked. With the iRead 3 test this year, we were uncertain whether or not the state would support an outside organization, so we made the RFP for second grade. And through consideration and talking with DOE, we found that that was something that could be done. And so they made a proposal, and we'd like to recommend that proposal, and the board accept that. They have included items that we feel will address the needs of students who do not pass iRead 3. And among those would be some intensity of instruction for students that do not pass iRead 3. And typically through the year, some of those students would be meeting with an interventionist. So we will include and hire interventionists through Richmond Community Schools, and they will be partnering with the Every Child Can Read Foundation. We've also talked to Mr. Ahouse and just expressed some things with consideration of the iRead 3 test this year, and you have a copy of those considerations that we would like them to honor. And one of those would be to maintain that 10-to-2 instructor to student ratio consistently through the day. Student learning targets will be identified based on Richmond Community Schools classroom assessments, which they have done, but also with iRead 3, because we'll receive information for students that do not pass, and we certainly want those to be attended to. Also, students who have failed iRead 3 will be placed in as few geographically concentrated locations as possible so that we can consolidate our interventionists to work with them. And for example, and I don't know if it'll work out this way, but Earlham College has 3 groups that work there, and that might be a good location for those students to be at that location. The last thing then would be we'll have to administer that retest for students that do not pass iRead 3, and we'll have to do that within the window on Richmond Community School property under supervision of teachers. So, and all those teachers would be satisfactory in which to do that. So we feel really it's a win-win. The concentrated effort that we have received through the third grade academy with the student-to-teacher ratio and the intensity of the day, along with the great power of sight where they're located throughout Richmond, the door-to-door transportation, all of those are incentives for kids to attend, and they have been. And so we want to combine that with what we will be partnering with them to make sure that all of our students end up passing. We have no idea how, at this point, students have taken the test. We just don't know yet the number, and we're anxious to know how many students passed. We hope it's 95% or 100%, but we anticipate there'll be a few that probably won't. I don't know if Dr. Bohr, if you want to.
Well, I'd like to express appreciation to Dr. Doring out there in the audience who's here, because he's worked as a liaison between the school corporation and the Every Child Can Read group. And I think that the work this year to craft this hybrid proposal is going to serve both organizations very well. It's going to maintain the integrity of what has been the third grade reading academy, but it's also going to serve our new need, which is addressing the intervention requirements brought on by the iRead 3. This may be the best program to date.
We are so
through the summer.
fortunate to have that community support.
Yeah, I really appreciate Rick Ahouse, Kathy Parker, and Mark Millis, who have worked, and Vic Josie and Dr. Doring. So I think it's a good proposal that we're bringing forward for a recommendation tonight.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Heine makes the motion and Aaron Stevens seconds the motion. Is there any other conversation anyone would like to have?
I didn't hear you mention, I'm assuming there will still be good shepherds. The
Yes.
volunteers assigned to each class, because that's a very positive element, the relationship between the good shepherds and the
Absolutely.
kids.
I think all of the things that we have come to appreciate will be included with our program.
And so who will the other students be? Say we don't have enough.
We would have, and it's in the proposal, students who fail the language arts portion of I-STEP would also be strong candidates. Now, last year, because the year extended a little bit longer, we had that information. We may not have that, but we'll have acuity scores that will give us close indicators on which students would be eligible.
Well, I heard from a parent, well, if my child doesn't fail I read, will we still have third grade academy? And so I just wanted to make sure it was clear for the public that.
The I Read 3 students, the students who fail I Read 3 would form a subset of all those students served, assuming that the students who fail I-STEP would be a greater number. We don't know that.
Sure.
For sure. What we're hoping is that we have a very small group of students to have to serve. But last year, as we worked and got closer to the date, we were liberal in how we applied those requirements, and I would imagine we will be doing that again this year.
Dixie?
I wanted to ask a question. I saw one place where it said a ratio of 5 to 1, and another place that said 10 students.
We have a teacher and an instructional assistant that work with 10 students, so it's a 2-to-1 instructor, or 10
to 2.
10 to 2 instructor ratio to student.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? On to our master plan.
An update for the board on the master planning was requested last, I think it was the last meeting, and it was specifically talking about how our work is affecting some of our programs. Some of these programs are existing programs, some are emerging programs, and what I've done tonight is to assemble some of the people who are working closest on those programs and for them to talk to you briefly about how programs are being impacted by our planning. In almost every case, we're not prepared to release a final polished brochure on what the programs look like. We're getting close in some of these cases, but we are here to talk tonight about what's happening at this point, and in some cases we're very close. So for the first two programs, I would like to ask Mrs. Hilligoss to talk about our community youth services and the alternative education program, which will be both co-located at the Baxter Building next fall.
Good evening. First of all, for our existing programs, we had been working with Mr. Mays to make sure that the building is ready when our students begin in the fall. We also are developing a new program for K-4 students. This will be an alternative to expulsion program for students who are exhibiting chronic and significant behavioral difficulties who have been recommended for expulsion. This will be a program that will respond to behavioral issues very quickly. We will also, though, the students will have to be expelled under Indiana discipline codes. This will be a transition program in the sense that students will come to us and then transition back to their home school. As all of our students have been assigned, all of our elementary students have been assigned to their schools next year, there are no students assigned to this program yet, as there are no expelled elementary students beginning for next school year. Some of the components for the program, we will have one FTE. The students will have access to second step violence prevention curriculum, steps to respect bullying curriculum. All students will be on a personal education plan. We will have a heavy emphasis on literacy and math. They will have access to the core curriculum. And we will also make every attempt to assign these students or connect them with the mental health provider. So that's our K-4 program for general education students. And then we're working with the high school to help them develop a program for their expelled students who might not qualify for their current alternative program, and that's still in the works. We're still discussing that.
Questions?
I need some clarification. When you use alternative, currently, there are alternative ed students in the high school.
Yes.
And are those the kids you're talking about when you talk about alternative?
For the high school program, often, in many districts, when students are expelled, they're expelled without any educational ties. They're just gone. And our district has gone to great lengths to keep kids connected educationally. So a student may be expelled, and the expulsion examiner may recommend that the student continue with education on a probationary education PCEA, continued education agreement. And that's what we're looking at for these students.
Okay, so that's different than the alternative
Yes,
program
yes.
in the high school. So we may have to name it something else so that,
Yeah.
so that we don't get confused.
And then one other question that's come several times, just for you to clarify for the public. A lot of parents think that if they have a child that has special needs, they'll automatically be sent.
Oh, no, we have a process in special education, and the program that we have currently that will move to Baxter, it's a case conference decision. That's the most restrictive environment. We need to exhaust our resources in the other buildings. I mean, that's a well-oiled machine, and we've used that machine for 17 years, and it works.
Thank you.
So, no.
I also want to emphasize that there have not been assignments to that program. There have been rumors out there that we have enrollment in that program. That's not how this works. We have no way of looking forward and determining next fall or thereafter who will be recommended for that program. So it's an alternative to expulsion program.
Linda?
Well, that's my question. You say that it's an alternative to expulsion, but then did I hear you say that the students have to be expelled?
Yes. They will be, a student with a chronic behavioral issue will be recommended for expulsion because it's chronic or it's severe in nature. They will go to an expulsion meeting, and then it will be up to the expulsion examiner to recommend that the student continue to have educational services during this period of time, and then that would be the new K-4 program. So
We have numbers right now as to how many students from our elementary.
Four as of today.
That have been expelled?
Yes. Today was the fourth person.
Jeff?
Well, I guess, I guess I was expecting more, and not in a bad way, but one of the questions that I've been asked and even witnessed with when we were visiting the school buildings, we're talking about students that were in a classroom environment that had been disruptive in the classroom for multiple weeks. The process to get them through their different, tier levels and that whole process is 3-4 weeks length of time. So it's almost like we need something in between what we're going to have at Baxter. I mean, I'm hoping that we've got some kind of a program set up somewhere else or whatever because what I'm hearing here is alternative to expulsion only. But I think the majority of the teachers in the classroom and other parents that have kids with other children in the classroom are concerned about that student that is just totally disrupting the class for 2 and 3 and 4 weeks before anything can be done with the student. So, and that's probably not for you to address.
I can address that, though.
Okay.
We currently have a process in place in working with our PBIS, a part of the second step curriculum and steps to respect, small groups, check in, check out. It takes time for people to change their behaviors. For any of us who've tried to stop doing something, we know that. And so maybe to give you a little pushback on the 3 weeks, for a child exhibiting a behavior for 3 weeks, we just wouldn't expect to say, stop that they would stop that, and then life would be good. And so we do have processes in place to work with those students to try to make things better. The alternative to this program, you have to have criteria as to why those students would go, or the floodgates. You know, we have to have some real firm criteria as to how the students would be placed in this program. But we do have things in place, and we are working with students in the buildings. It doesn't always happen as quickly as any of us would like, but we are working with those students, because we can none of them are throwaways, and so you just keep working and trying new things and adding more resources.
Mr. Slifer, I can respond. I oversee and supervise all of the due process proceedings and appoint hearing examiners. I think in many cases, we have a handful of students where the building principal understands the student reaches that Tier 3 and they are pushing the limit on defiant behavior. Yet they're very reluctant to expel the student, because right now the only alternative is that student would be out of school. So I don't know what estimate would be, because we just don't know yet, but I'm guessing there'll be a handful of students that the principal now will have a placement when the student reaches that level, and the student will have a place to go. And I would guess there might be 4 or 5 more this year that would fit into that category. 2 weeks ago, I had a principal call me, and she did not want to expel the student, but the behavior warranted an exclusion from school. So that's kind of where we've been in terms of trying to make it understandable for you. So I think with a good program and good parameters, we'll be serving their needs.
And Mr. Slifer, the other thing I think to clarify, this is for general education students. We already have a program for expelled
Right,
elementary, middle, and high school
And I was
students.
talking about
And
that.
that number is more than 4.
Right, and I understood that.
Sure, okay, I just
Yeah.
didn't want you to think that was it.
But I
That's
just,
the state
but
hospital.
it almost sounds like the first step is creating this alternative to expulsion. Now we have, so maybe as this grows, it can be, I just want to make sure that we're, not only do we need to be worried about the student in the classroom that needs the attention, but we also have to worry about the other 15 or 18
Sure.
students in the
And the
classroom
teacher
that needs
who's
the
trying to
education.
teach,
So-
yeah.
Sure, and I understand that. And this will be our first attempt this coming school year, and it's good to start with some narrow parameters, and then we can loosen up versus vice versa. Because we've already heard from parents, my child's going to be there next year. And so,
Well, I don't think it's anyone's goal that that's where their student starts
Sure.
out, but I guess I just. Okay.
Why do we expel them? What's the reason for the expulsion?
well,
If you're going to have an alternative.
so we can still have, if the behavior continues to be so disruptive and violent, we still have an out.
Your question
What's the criteria?
would be,
Why be on a PCEA, I think?
why go through the actual expulsion? This would be an alternative to expulsion as opposed to an alternative placement in expulsion. Is that what your
Yeah.
question is? And we're still hammering that detail out.
That's
It
good.
very well may be that that's exactly how it ends up.
So instead of actually expelling them, they would go there first.
It's an alternate too.
I would think
Yeah.
a step before the expulsion.
Yeah, yeah. But I also want to remind us all that part of the reason we underwent the master planning reorganization was to allow some funds to continue our PBIS and our Centerstone and our CIS, Communities and Schools people who have done a lot of work with behavioral challenges. And so we're trying to put a big picture in place, not just,
Sure. We're another piece. This is another piece, and it's all about layers.
And then they continue on
Thank you, Mrs. Hilligoss.
Next staff member I'd like to call up would be Gwen Gibbs. And Mrs. Gibbs is working on our programs at Hibbard, and we'll have an update about that.
It is my real pleasure to give you an update of what's happening at the Hibbard Building, where we'll be serving our early college, our Logos, and our life skills students. It's been a pleasure to work with Mr. Mays, who is taking personal pride, I think, in what's happening there at the building. Very, very, very shortly after the agreement was made to renovate the Hibbard Building, it was being destroyed internally. So there's been a lot of demolition work done there, and the building, it's exciting to go there, and you can, it's creating a vision there for what it will be. So on the main floor will be the life skills suite, and that area is all opened up now, and they'll be putting windows in the brick walls that face 9th Street and J. And they'll have a nice area there with a kitchen, a sensory room, and the things that the students need there. Upstairs, a place is being built or renovated there for the early college and Logos, and they've created a hallway space that's made the movement upstairs. It's increased that mobility there. The center of that upstairs is what will be the media center, still a library, but we want to move beyond the traditional sense of library, and that's where I understand that Rob told you about the technology grant. Some of the funds there for the collaborative tables with the media will be placed there, so teams, students can work together. So I was able to meet with Judy Studebaker, and she's very excited about transforming the building with color. She's looking at a very clean, neutral basics with floors and walls, and then very bright splashes of color to just give a real upbeat feel to the building. So it's just really exciting right now to think about what's happening there. One of the highlight features in the building will be a large wall map of the world, just to be in keeping with what we're wanting to accomplish there in terms of giving our children a global perspective throughout the curriculum and what we're doing there in the building. Staffing issues are just about completed. We are sorry that we'll be losing Mr. Helbrung, who's been with the Logos program for many, many years, and he will be retiring this year. We think we have an excellent replacement for him, so we're excited to begin working with her, and we've added a 5th grade teacher to the program. And the same with early college. We are still, I think just today some people may have gotten notice of moving to early college to fill out their staffing needs, because we are moving into the with serving 4th and 5th graders. We've got 2 cohort groups of students that we're identifying right now. So I've been working with Jackie Schlichty too, as she's identifying for the early college program, and I'm working with the team identifying for the Logos Lab School, and so that will be completed tomorrow. We'll finalize those numbers and those students so that we can send out letters over spring break, and so students will be notified then of their enrollment into the programs. The life skills staff is also in place. Those teachers have been assigned, and the staff is looking at my catchphrase is will be 3 identities but 1 community, and that's really important for us to develop. We'll start that April 17th when throughout the district all of the teachers will be meeting with their new staff members and get to meet each other there. So that'll be our first time to meet together in a more formal way. And then also May 15th, and we're going to have our meetings in the Hibbard Building, and Mr. Mays is working with us to make sure nothing falls on us or anything. We'll be safe in there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there's one very large, beautiful room at the facing L Street on the main floor that we are looking at the possibility of having a full-day pull-out program there, so that students, like one day the first grade would come, another day the second grade, so that the kids would be able to come throughout the city and work together. And this room is large enough that 2 staff members could work with that group. And we're looking at, similar to the RTI process with tiers, where you identify for Tier 2 and Tier 3, the pullout would actually be a part of a Tier 3 service. And these would be students who've been identified that we can safely say that they can master in 4 days what it might need, other children might need 5 days for, and they could really profit from the 5th day of enrichment in the building there. And we're hoping with the transportation now, with the shuttle system that'll be in place with Test and Dennis, the early college and Logos kids will go there first and then be shuttled into Hibbard, that our elementary kids who have pull out that day could just take the same transportation. So there's some things that we'll need to work out, but that's our hope.
And that's
that
what
we'll be able to do that.
That sounds like a wonderful program. That's something we really need to promote to the community.
Yeah.
When you mentioned 4th and 5th grade, you're talking about current 4th and 5th graders who will
Right.
be 5th and 6th graders next year. We're not
Right.
talking about adding a 4th grade.
Right.
We have to be very careful and clear when we say things on television, because those kind of things get spread around. So
Yeah.
what are the numbers that we're talking about in terms of early college and Logos? And
I don't know the candidacy for early college in terms of the numbers, but I know they're identifying cohorts of 25 for 5th grade and 25 for 6th grade next year. And in our case, our numbers will be a little larger for 6th grade because we have the capacity with the staffing, no more than 30. And then our 5th grade, there'll be more of a self-contained for the 5th grade, just integrating them into the program. And that will be, the numbers will be a little smaller. But it's a challenging, difficult process right now because we've got close to 80 students at each of those grade levels who have applied for the program.
wow.
So
A lot of
It's
the
such a-
questions, big questions, have come from life skills parents who are concerned about their child going over to Hibbard and not being included in, and being in the least restrictive environment. How are you going to handle that?
that is a major concern. The life skills teachers will be meeting with Mrs. Bergdahl and I, and they have some ideas for things that they can do. One, they've thought about having a store that would fit right with the life skills curriculum, and that they would man the school store, and they would interact with students who come to buy in their school supplies.
Like at the cafeteria we have now at the high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that will be one way. I think we're going to need to look at, and I'm right at this point, I don't know the kids. I think that as we all get together there in the building and as we make it a priority that we are going to be one community and we look for ways to work together and involve each other within the programs, that I think that's going to emerge. And I'm confident that the folks who are going to be there value that,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll make sure that it happens.
Other comments and questions? Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to ask Dr. Parker to talk about our preschool plans. Well, just right there.
I think this is a review for most of you. We talked about this at a prior board meeting, but Dr. Borf asked us to do the update. The planning for the preschool is coming along, and the early childhood special education classrooms that are currently housed at Baxter will just be picked up and moved in total to the new space that Mr. Mays is designing for them at Crestdale. And we'll have the 2 classrooms there. We'll also have 2 itinerant special education teachers who work with preschoolers in other settings, and we'll have 1.5 preschool speech and language pathologists working with students in that setting. Then the 4 classrooms that we have at the Early Learning Center and the 4 classrooms that we have out in our buildings will continue to exist. They'll just be in different sites right now, based on the plans that we've gotten from Mr. Mays. We will have 2 of the early childhood classrooms at Crestdale, 2 at Elizabeth Star Academy, 2 at Fairview, 1 at Vale, and 1 at Westview. The only school that won't have one, you'll notice, is Charles, and right now that's because of a space issue. And we'll just wait and see what we look like in the fall. The teachers will be notified Friday where they will be placed, our early childhood instructors, and we anticipate keeping our staff intact and just having them move to new places. The funding for our preschool will remain the same. Will be supported partly out of general fund and partly out of special education funding. Transportation, we can only provide transportation for students who attend Crestdale. Most of the students who have IEPs will be attending there. If we have parents who cannot transport and they require transportation, then they will be placed at the Crestdale site. And that's a fiscal consideration. The whole purpose of the plan was to save money, and we could not increase services, so we're only able to provide transportation to one site. The days will remain the same. Parents can choose a 2-day-a-week, 3-day-a-week, or 5-day-a-week program, a morning or afternoon session. It's open to children who are ages 3 to 5, and they can enroll the day they turn 3. And if they're eligible for kindergarten, we ask that they go to kindergarten, although we do have some families who choose to remain in preschool for an additional year. The morning session is 8:30 to 11. The afternoon session will be from 12 to 2:30. And students whose family income makes them eligible for free and reduced price lunch will not be charged tuition. Other families will be charged $5 per session. And we will have breakfast and lunch available to students.
Questions?
Any questions about preschool?
I'm always interested in how people get to know that. How do we market and how do we balance the need to fill our preschools and get kids into preschool with the other preschools that are out there in the community?
Well, we have, from the very beginning, worked with Head Start to ensure that students who are eligible for Head Start can go to Head Start. We have had some students who have been duly enrolled, and have been some decisions made about students who might need that double dose of preschool, that they attend Head Start and one of our programs. But we have always worked with Head Start to ensure that they have the number of students they need to keep their funding. They serve about 300 students from across Wayne County, and they are required to maintain a waiting list. We have never had any difficulty filling our seats. We've always been full and had students waiting for spots.
Other questions?
So are we going to actively go out into the community and support the 3-5 program as a district? I mean, it almost sounds like we're kind of trying to shield Head Start a little bit too. I mean, don't we want the kids in our system? Don't we want them in our preschool program? I mean,
My understanding was from the very beginning that there was an agreement with Head Start that we would maybe not cooperate or protect their program, but that we would be respectful of their enrollment process as well. And what that looks like in the future is anyone's guess. But we will be aggressively pursuing all of our enrollment levels at all the grades.
Thank you.
I'd also like to ask Mr. Mops and Mr. Riddell to come forward and talk about some of the plans that are taking place with regard to our 5-6 program. As you know, that program will be at our what we call our middle schools now, but those will be our intermediate programs.
We're passing out this is kind of like a little timeline or things that we're working on. We know it's all about relationships, and so we're working really hard to make sure that our incoming students feel comfortable at Denison Test. And we can talk at Test. We've identified the rooms that will be set aside for the 5th and 6th graders, and those rooms have already been identified, and they're still working on that at Dennis. We are going to have parent meetings for incoming students. So, and we felt like their needs and their questions and their concerns might be different for each grade level. So the incoming 5th graders, you can see, will be coming one night. A couple nights later, we'll have the incoming 6th graders, and then the next week we'll have the incoming 7th graders. So that way we can address any concerns that they have individually. They'll be able to see the rooms that will be assigned to the 5th and 6th graders collectively, maybe not their individual room. And then at Dennis and at Test, we've separated those out. What we've done historically, we're going to continue. Our counselors go to the feeding schools of each one of our schools, and they talk with the students. Sometimes they have lunch with them, depending upon the time they go. Just once again, building relationships because we feel that's so important. And then at some point, those students will visit our schools and to see how that process works and see what our schools look like, hopefully alleviating fears that might be there with these students. In fact, we've already started some of that with some students that already have some fears. We've had one young man visit our school a couple times. And then another important time will be in August, and that is prior to school starting. We have during the day orientations, and that's for students and parents to come. Once again, the building will be open. They can tour the building, they can look at the building, and they can learn about pick up and drop off. They can learn about school supplies that are necessary, how we work lunch, and those types of things, and how we run our day-to-day business. Once again, we're trying to build relationships, and we are trying to alleviate any fears that might arise with parents and also students. And that's nothing new with us. We get those same fears with 7th graders when they come in, and we deal with the fears as 8th graders when they go to the high school. And the thing that I always ask them is if they were afraid when they came into 7th grade, and the students always say yes, and I said, was there anything to be afraid of at that point? And they always tell me no. And so I'm trying to alleviate their fears as they go to the high school. So I think it's all unknown, and so we try to eliminate a lot of that unknown and make things better.
I'll just add that we're also looking at the possibility and entertaining the idea of doing a similar thing like the Freshman Academy does, where they bring in the students a day early. I'm not sure what they call that program, but
the
we're
KOM.
looking into and making some plans to possibly do a similar thing, utilizing some mentors that had just left the school and things of that nature that we do through the Earlham program, that building on those mentors and
I think
everything.
that's
So
a great idea.
We're not there yet, but considering that.
No, I just noticed that for Test, Charles isn't on the list and Star isn't, but Fairview is. I'm assuming.
They will be there. Dan hasn't, our counselor hasn't scheduled those in yet.
Okay.
But they will be.
Okay. I assumed that, but I didn't want anybody looking at this and thinking that we were ignoring some of
This is up to date. The ink is still probably wet on it, so we're still working on it, and we're still coming up with ideas. So.
Other questions and comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next piece would be transportation. And Mr. Coddington, would you talk about transportation just a bit?
Sure will. We're running a lot of options in transportation. It looks like what we're going to try to land on is we're going to have a 3-tier system on 2 times. It's a little complex. We're looking to starting the intermediate schools and the high school first thing in the morning, and having different buses picking up students at the same time. So instead of running a 3-tier system at 3 different times, we believe we can run a 3-tier system on 2 times. For example, they would drop off the intermediate and high school at 7:30. School would start at 7:45. The buses would leave at 7:30, go pick up all the elementary students and drop them off at 8:15 for an 8:30 start time. And that's different than what we thought. We thought we were going to have to have 45 minutes between each group. I want to put a pitch in for student transit. We've been meeting every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. all day, running different scenarios on this, on what to do. They're doing that at their cost to bring their people in, 2 people. One's driving in from Newcastle, one's driving in We have a consultant, we're saying, well, what if we did this? What if we did this? So we're getting close. The other thing that came up this week that's going to added, we're not going to have this transportation issue solved in the next 30 days. We're going to know what routes and pretty much what I've just told you today. But we came to the point that if we don't want the students on the same bus at the same time, we probably don't want them at the same bus stop. I hadn't thought about that. So we're going to have to be devising high school stops and intermediate stops at the same time. So there's a lot of complexity to this, a lot of different variables that are going on, but I feel very comfortable. The also thing that we've shared with Dr. Borf, the first day of school, we're going to have every sub-driver on call at the bus garage the first day of school. We're going to have a bank of telephones with 10 people answering the telephone, so they don't get a busy signal when they go there. There's going to be a lot ready. We have got to get it right the first day of school. We understand this, and we'll make it happen.
Every year, you should have 10 people on the phones the first day of school.
We will.
You slipped in there some time, so we're really talking about changing the start and ending time for schools. So when will that be available for parents to know that? Because can we know that without the transportation, or do we have to wait until the transportation before we can know the times, or what are we looking at here?
The only thing we ask is for 45 minutes in between. So it's going to take, they can pick a time.
And you have to remember, this is all organic.
We understand.
Okay?
But
One thing
parents are
touches.
concerned about
Well,
organic
but in order to
plans.
answer your question, I have to talk about that. The parents are going to have to be patient with us for another few weeks, because we're still not sure how that schedule change on transportation might affect our creative arts schedule change that we offer to students at the intermediate schools for next year. We also don't know how our entire creative arts schedule all during the day might be impacted by this. So that's why we're doing the modeling. We're also still looking at enrollment. Next week, we will have our enrollment numbers much more specific and identified based on statements from parents that we've been taking in during the last couple weeks at parent-teacher conferences. So next week, we'll be able to start looking ahead at those buildings, and everything connects to everything else. We think this three-tier approach will work at the two different times. We think that's going to happen. But what we're going to have to also be mindful of is that we have these shuttles now that we have to use. We're listening to the parents talk to us about the importance of having older students home in the afternoons when the younger students are released. But we now have to think about at the elementary pre-day or whatever you want to call it, before the day starts, some child care opportunities. So we don't know exactly where that is. So we're not trying to put off any of the information. We want everyone to know where we are in the process.
Right.
The information we anticipate will be ready in a few weeks, but don't look for it before spring break, which is this week.
Jeff?
Well, I guess when you mentioned the time, a couple of those times was slipped in. I hear that later start times are better for older students. I hear different things. I guess I was a little surprised to hear a 7:30 start time for the high school. But I guess I'm wondering why. I don't know what the best start time is for the kids. I mean, I don't know when are they best suited to
I can tell
learn.
you what research says. Research says for the adolescents that it should be 10, 11,
Well,
not
that's the
what
reason-
we do,
that's the
which is,
reason-
I mean, what we did a few years ago was to show some respect for the research. But we didn't honor the research in the sense that we didn't start the high school at 10 o'clock. But to answer what you're talking about, there's nothing to say that we can't stagger our start times for students at the high school and also stagger the end times for the high school students. what we tend to think of is that all teachers come in at the same time and all teachers leave at the same time, and all students come in at the same time and leave at the same time. And at the high school, I can tell you in the future, the very near future, that's going to be a thing of the past. And we're studying models to actually put in place. Mrs. Whoopi is already opening the high school in the late afternoons to 6 o'clock for credit recovery. It very well could be that next year we'll be conducting some classes until 6 o'clock and opening the building at a 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock starting time for some students, particularly those who work at night.
What percentage of our students at the high school take the bus? Will that be a transportation nightmare type problem?
I couldn't tell
I
you
mean,
what
if you're a
percentage.
junior or senior, it probably drops considerably, but.
The
Well-
percentage, we have 17 buses now
At the high
Okay.
school.
for the high school. Now, that doesn't mean they're full.
Right.
It just means there's 17 routes.
Well, with dual credit and some of the other things that goes on in high school too, I can see where flex time, because that was the next, I was going to ask that question about flex time at high school, because the way we're educating our kids now, that's sort of a needed thing for a high school to do.
And I'm not so sure you're going to see a full-fledged dual schedule operation in place next year, but you may see the beginning of it
Yeah.
to address the very concept
Great
that you're
first
talking
steps.
So
about.
it just makes me, and I understand working parents also want to have time to get their children ready for school so they can get ready to go to work. And, you know, some people have start times at 7 and 8 and 9. I mean,
Six.
it's a whole change in the whole society, but, you know, I live out in the country and there's buses picking elementary kids up at 20 till 7.
Yeah.
You know, so.
On Liberty Avenue, it's a little after 6.
So I guess, and part of this concern is that
About
it would
6
be nice to be able to push that
Yeah.
later in the morning.
For the elementary students, that's what we've heard loud and clear. It would be, and we know it would be good to get them a little later, if not for anything else other than just get them a little more light
Oh.
Yeah.
on
Yes.
that departure time. Where it works really well at the high school, you'll still see some students who will probably be very happy about coming in at 7:30 because it means that they get out that much earlier in the afternoon and can get to practice.
Their
uh,
after-school activities, work or whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 600 plus students at the high school who participate in extracurricular activities, and it's a real stress to get them to their competition
Yeah.
on time,
That was our
given
trouble.
the schedule right now. While that's not driving it, it's certainly a nice byproduct of a
Well,
an
you have to
earlier start
consider all
time.
the factors.
Yeah. That's a big one, though.
Well, thank you
That's-
for that update.
Well, one more.
One more.
One more. That would be micro-society. We have one elementary
Ah.
program that is, that has a theme, and I've asked Mrs. Quinn to be here tonight to talk to you about some work they're doing on the micro-society idea.
Thank you.
I had a great PowerPoint, but I only have 2.5 minutes, so I'm just going to talk instead. We had a lot of discussion when we decided to go from a K-6 building down to a K-4 building as to how that would impact microsociety. And so we did, and Joyce is here, and she's here to support me, but we talked about pro-con lists, like what were the benefits of what was going on with micro versus, you know, some of the things that we thought might be not a detriment, but a difficulty for us. And so, you know, just looking at the last year and where we've come with our community involvement and our partnerships that we've really started building, when we looked at everything, that so outweighs, you know, our biggest impact on the con side was time. And we get that. And one of the things that we're talking about is instead of, we don't want micro to be an add-on. We want it to be a part of every day, a part of our culture. And so we are working really hard to change it from, well, we do micro 3 days a week in the afternoon, to incorporating it more into the culture. One example would be, we know that vocabulary is something that's very weak among our students. That's an area where we really feel like students struggle. And so we said, well, one of the things we could do was, we went through they went through all of the state standards, K through 6, and pulled out vocabulary words pertaining to social studies, microsociety, and we have been incorporating those into the 90-minute reading block, into vocabulary lessons, and just because Joyce will never let me come without a gift. We even created our own dictionary of microsociety terms, so you guys can each have one and pass them around. And if I don't have enough, we'll bring some more in. But the kids are really starting to focus on those words. We have them posted in the building, and so we're trying to make it more of all the time. And there's research out there that says those primary years are huge for starting to build those early skills. And if you look at the Common Core standards in math, they've taken out some things like money and time at the kindergarten level. And so we're going to be able to teach those through our microsociety lessons, getting the kids to count their own money, knowing when their time limits are, and all those things. And so we thought, this is really probably even better to go for those K-4 kids. Mrs. Hayes is going to travel out to Pennsylvania. There's a school out there that does just K2. And so she's a visual person and she wants to see it in action. So she's going to travel out there, and she's actually going to Louisville this weekend to a microsociety like a big convention, and then she's going to go out to Pennsylvania and see their school also and see how they're running it with a K-2, because we were worried about taking the students off the top would take away some of our leadership. But we started looking through the classes and we said, we have leaders at every level, we just have to groom them and we have to continue that. Some things that are going on that are big right now, if you looked in today's paper or looked in the paper later this evening, there were pictures in the Palladium item of our students going to the Jeanette Mansion. And our first and second grade teachers are working with the Star Jeanette Foundation, and they are building that relationship and teaching the kids about the history of the Star neighborhood, the Star district, and then the history of live jazz, or recorded jazz. And one of the students said today, one of the teachers came back and said, "You're never going to believe this." The boy said, "I'm so proud to live in Richmond." Like now that he understands how important it has been to so many things, he was really excited. And so they're starting to understand. And so to make them proud of being in the Star neighborhood and making them proud to be a part of Richmond is really important to us. And these are first and second graders that we're starting with. And we also are working with Cope Environmental Center and the City of Richmond, and we're working on pulling in the 2 radio stations currently. And we've come up with a campaign for anti-littering, and we're going to start smaller, and then we're going to make it a larger campaign, and it's going to be called the Just One campaign, because we always talk about if you just pick up that one piece of trash, if everybody picked up that one piece of trash that you walk over, how much difference it would make. And so we'll be kicking that off in early April. April 10th will be our kickoff with the city, and they're going to bring in some things, and Cope's going to come in and work with us. And we're really excited. We think it could end up being huge. We're not sure how far it can go, and of course Joyce gets giddy with everything that we do, but it's just something really exciting. The kids don't even know all about it yet, but the mayor was very excited, and we've been meeting with her, and like I said, Cope Center thinks this is a great idea, and so we think those partnerships are more important in teaching our kids than we'll find the time in the day. We'll find the time to carve out. I have more, but I think you guys probably have questions, and I'll probably end up answering them with more information. So,
Questions?
or if not, that's great.
Well, I just hope you take your anti-littering global to the
Yes.
to the rest of the schools.
Well, we
and
want
all of Richmond.
We really think that if we want to start it small, we've been working with even having microsociety likes people to have a heart goal, something that's not about money making, but it's about giving back. And so our heart goal is that we have pride in our community. And so that's where this is going to go. And so we're starting very small. We're going to start with our kids, and then we're hoping to, expand it out and keep growing it exponentially until it does make a big impact. Joyce even wondered if we should be trademarking the Just One campaign logo, just because it could really pick up and grow. And so we're really excited. It's just something that needs to happen.
Yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, thanks.
I think Suzanne's comment that branding is entrepreneurial would fit.
Yes.
And that's, I'm sure, where Joyce was going.
Very much so, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to wrap that up by just commenting on the fact that we also have staffs to blend. That's not necessarily a program, but it does impact everything we're doing within our programs. And to that end, I've put a calendar at your place of the months of April and May. And in April and May, we have Dr. Anthony Muhammad coming in, so long as we approve a contract tonight.
Yes.
And for five different days, he will be here, and his express purpose is to work with our staffs and our employees as we attempt to bring them together and blend them numerically into a common building-based mission. Also on these calendars, we show you the different times when the staffs come together. For example, on, let me see what the date is. Well, on the April 17th, we have all of our staffs coming together. Kindergarten teachers will be coming together specifically to prepare with one another for the roundup on the 19th. We have pre-K 4 open houses from 4 to 6 that evening. TEST has its expo, which is not necessarily a part of this, but we wanted it to be on there because that has become a community event, and also for parents. In May, though, we have open houses at the high school. We have the parent orientations for fifth graders. We've gone over that with Mr. Mays, or Mr. Mops and Mr. Riddell. It all comes together, though, in the month of May, when we begin to bring our staffs together with their principals. And of course, on the 10th and 11th, we have Dr. Muhammad coaching in the buildings, working side by side with the staff members. Wouldn't necessarily be with every staff member, but he'll be actually doing coaching within the buildings on those days.
Our new configuration, or in their old buildings?
It'll have to be in their old buildings, yeah, in the existing buildings. But he's going to talk about with them how we blend on an individual basis. That wraps up that part.
That's good. Good updates. It gets you excited and inspires confidence.
One other date, when is the Teacher of the Year?
Is that on here?
It is the first week in May.
Right, it's
The
usually
first
that Thursday, the 3rd.
I think I might have that.
It wasn't on here, but we ought to put that
So
on.
that would be the 3rd, yeah.
Yep. And that usually occurs 4-ish.
It'll be 4 o'clock at Civic Hall.
We need to be there. Good to get it ahead of time.
We have several requests for approval related to master planning, and the first one is the approval of the common wage scale. And you have in your packet, and let me get to that, you should have in your packet an actual description of the wage scale. And I'd like to, before I recommend approval of that, I'd like for Mr. Mays to talk to you a little bit about how that was developed and where we go with it.
Okay, thank you. The common wage construction hearing has changed a little bit this year from in the past. For instance, we would have that once a year, and it was good for a whole year, the wage scale. Now it's only good for 3 months. And the reason why we're doing it so late this year is because we have Dennis coming on board for bidding in June, and we had to catch that 3 months so we wouldn't have another wage hearing. The other thing is that they changed is that the state labor, when they were part of the wage committee, their facts and figures were always 3 to 4 years behind and really didn't make much sense. So what they've done is that since there is a representative from the AFL-CIO on the committee, then the state's rep, Gaylord, Mr. Gaylord of the Associated Contractors of Indiana, which is a non-union group similar to the AFL, and so he took the state's rep's place. So that would give us, of the union scale, an up-to-date. They do their surveys through the whole county and update that. And then we have the non-union scale, that it's also updated. So we have two really good scales to look at. So this year we had Mr. Evans and Mr. Gaylor on the committee, and then we had Gentry Atkins, who's appointed by the county commissioners, and Jim Doherty, which was a taxpayer representative, and then I was on the committee as the industry rep. And as you know, we go to skilled, unskilled, and semi-skilled labor. What I would like to do would be just hit a few of the skilled, just to show you the difference of what we were looking at. For instance, the AFL-CIO carpenters is $40.02 with fringes, skilled. The Associated Builders carpenters is $24.82 skilled. The electricians union scale is $43.92 versus a non-union of $30.50. And the plumbers is $45.43 versus $32.63. And the laborers are $30.76 versus $21.28. So you see there's about a $10, $15 per hour difference. And so now we have to determine what is the average wage scale for Wayne County. So what I did was I talked to several contractors in Wayne County that union and non-union that generally bid our work, school work. And it was interesting. Oberly is a union contractor, but said they would use their other company called Crane Construction, which is a non-union company, and they've already taken drawings on Hibbard. So Crane has drawings on Hibbard that we'll be bidding shortly. So the committee then talked about the various scales, and then we looked at Western Wayne School Corporation, Nettle Creek School Corporation, the City of Richmond, Midwest Industrial Park, and RP&L Warehouse all had wage hearings within the last 6 months or so, and they all picked the non-union scale as the prevailing wage scale of Wayne County. So with looking at that, plus all of the local contractors in Wayne County that we interviewed, the committee determined that the non-union scale was the common wage for Wayne County. So when it came to vote, we had 4 yeses and 1 no, and of course you can guess who the no was. So it was very interesting, and this is the first year that we've really been able to look at accurate current figures.
So my recommendation is that you approve the common wage scale as recommended and as presented.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Suzanne Darengowski makes the motion and Dixie Robinson seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
We have window bids.
And for the window bids, we turn to Mr. Coddington.
Yes, we ask that the board, that the Crestdale Elementary window replacement project be awarded to Richmond Glass Works LLC at the low bid price of $129,800, meeting the bid specifications, then advertised, and we have everything ready to go for that, so we can get the Crestdale project started.
Cool.
I so move.
Second.
Jeff Slifer makes the motion and Aaron Stevens seconds the motion. Comments and questions from anyone? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
On to approval of professional services.
I'd like to recommend that the board approve the contract as presented and as published on the web for professional services with the New Frontier 21 Consulting. This is Dr. Anthony Muhammad's organization.
Do I hear a motion to accept? Dixie Robinson makes the motion and Linda Morgeson seconds the motion. Comments and questions?
Well, they're the ones who went to see him.
Yes.
And brought him here. And you're pretty excited about this, I take it.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
We also have 2 more policies. I shouldn't say two more. These were the two policies presented at the last board meeting. These are second readings. And I do want to draw your attention, well, we'll take it when it comes. The 5113 has to do, .01, has to do with non-resident student transfers. This is the second reading. There were no changes in that one as it's presented tonight.
Do I hear a motion to accept
So
the
moved.
second reading? Pat Heine makes the motion and Aaron Stevens seconds the motion. Comments and questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The second one, which is 8600, which is the transportation policy, is brought to you tonight for second reading with some changes resulting from our last board meeting. You'll notice in A, and by the way, there's, at your places, there is the newest one. It's a stapled
Right.
version. And the change that we have has to do with elementary students. A has been expanded a bit to read elementary students residing more than .4 miles from the school which they will attend qualify for free transportation. If you remember, there wasn't a reference to elementary students. Mr. Slifer asked about that, and it was an oversight. It should have been there. But what I've also done, as we've added that piece, I've also made changes in B and C simply to make that language correspond one to the next. And that's just
Those seem like
editorial.
reasonable distances.
Do I hear a motion to accept policy 8600 as presented?
So moved.
Aaron Stevens makes the motion and Dixie Robinson seconds the motion. Comments and questions? Jet?
And I didn't pick up on this on the first reading, but the statement under A, as it was in the original, you state kindergarten students who live on an established bus route qualify for free transportation, and that's carried on with the revision that you had here tonight. Does that mean if we have a kindergarten student that is not on an established route that we will not provide? I mean, that's the opposite of that statement.
Wouldn't necessarily mean that. But it might depend on where they live, and we might want to talk about that exception. But no, we normally pick up all the kindergarten students wherever they.
Well, I guess that would be my only comment, especially since now we're getting the additional funding. I guess that why can't we just strike that and just arbitrarily provide the transportation for all the kindergarten students?
Well, until that piece is built into the formula, we aren't sure where kindergarten will be from this point on.
Right.
It's still an optional program for parents, and it's not quite treated the same way in our formula as the other grade levels are. So I don't anticipate any difference, but the policy allows for some difference if it should occur.
I guess I would suggest that we strike that, and if they're a kindergarten student in Richmond schools, that we provide them transportation. I mean, if we, 10 years ago, we created $1 million to create the full-day K, and I guess I don't understand the limitation.
Give me an example of someone not on an established route. Are you talking about closer than 0.4 of a mile, or?
Live in another community, want to come to kindergarten, is that what you're talking about?
Could be. When this policy was created, kindergarten was probably not funded. It may have been a half-day program even. I'm not sure.
I think it was.
And so at that point, they had to live on a bus route to qualify. That's not necessarily the case anymore. We pick them all up. I think what we were trying to do was just to honor the pre-existing language, and heard nothing from the board in the first two in the first reading, so we left it. If you'd like to strike that, kindergarten students are
But if
elementary
they are in
students.
a different
Well,
community.
we're not talking about students in a different district, we're talking about students in our school district.
What struck me as I read that was that we establish bus routes when we know where kids live, right? And so an established bus route,
It's kind of moot.
was kind of a moot point. I would have struck it because it didn't make any sense to me, because where kids live, that's where we go. That's where we establish the routes, correct?
I think it makes it simpler then. Why don't we just strike that?
It's
I
not
don't
going
think
to
it
change our
changes-
practice.
It doesn't change
Strike
the.
it.
So,
Fine.
To amend the
yeah, I do, I will do
recommendation.
that. Do we amend, or do I have to rescind and,
You should rescind your vote, or your motion.
okay, I rescind the motion I made. And Aaron has to rescind his, or
I did,
you
I think
second?
I did.
And so the new recommendation would be for A, to read, elementary students residing more than .4 miles from the school which they will attend qualify for free transportation.
Why not elementary
Period.
students, including kindergartners? Do we
Right.
need to put that?
Yeah, well, elementary,
They are
they
elementary
are
students?
elementary students.
Okay, so I do what he just said. I move what he just said.
Is that clear, Pam? Okay. Okay, Pat made the motion, and Dixie seconded the motion. Any other comments and questions?
I've got one clarification. Let's make sure preschool is not part of elementary.
No. But I have a question about the guidelines. And while we don't have to vote on the guidelines, we get to comment, and I missed this. We changed the board policy to say we require the appropriate equipment, and the guideline says may install the appropriate. And I'm assuming that you will need to, administrators, change the guidelines to reflect what we
It
stated.
will reflect policy.
And I want that duly noted in the newspaper, since Muncie got an editorial about their cameras, right?
And
Well, that was cameras in the schools, right?
they took a lesson from us.
They did indeed.
We've had those for a
miss
long
it.
time. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we're on to frequently asked questions.
And we have Misty Hollis, who has prepared some remarks for the frequently asked questions.
The main question that came forward in the last week was parents wondering the reason and logic behind us possibly using C.R. Richardson for summer school, since it would be one of the buildings that we would no longer be utilizing next school year. And the response that was sent to that parent is related to there is so much movement and changes being done in all of our buildings that at this particular time that seems to be the best utilization of that building and for our kids, so they won't be disturbed during summer learning. That also is a good location for access to Boys and Girls Club for students that would want to access that facility after summer school. So that's our answer.
And if a parent does submit a question, you answer all the questions personally?
Bridget, we are forwarded those from Mr. Tidrow. They go to Dr. Borf, to me, and to Bridget Hazelbaker.
Okay.
Bridget is the one that oversees that those get answered, whether she answers them, I answer one.
Well,
or
I meant that
one.
we see that they do get answered personally from
Well,
someone.
and many times they're anonymous. So
And that does make it difficult, so
Yeah.
it makes it very difficult. There are times that we might redirect them to the frequently asked questions list that's on the website too, because some people just go straight, type in their question, and so we just redirect them or give them the link to that as well, so they can look at all the information and not just that specific question.
I hope we continue that after the school year starts, after we
I
have
think
this
we'll have to do that.
Yeah.
It's been a good access point for them, but also for us. I've had phone conversations with some of them too.
Good.
Is it time for a PI Live about these kind of changes and frequently asked questions? We've been there before, but now it's in the nitty-gritty of what's going to happen. And you hear, parents have so many different questions, and they listen to rumors, and they listen to this and that, and I don't know.
Well, I don't
if
know
it-
what their schedule is. Dale McConaughey's been very good about offering us time on that.
Maybe after spring break.
We haven't
when
talked about
get
that for a
few
while.
more.
I think they're doing some candidate forums in the
Oh, that's
next
true.
few weeks.
That's true. They would be.
Leading up, but May might be a really good time after the election.
Well, now
to-
that some things are starting to come together.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. We're on to our press conference. Does anyone out there have a question?
I don't know.
No? Then we'll go to the consent items.
On our consent items this evening, we have the approval of the minutes of the March 14th meeting. Also, a recommendation from Human Resources. And Mrs. Stewart, you have a name you'd like to add to that.
I do. We need to add to the consent agenda Nicole Bevins Vandervoort. We recommend that she be hired as assistant principal at Test Middle School.
Recommendation from Accounts Payable and a recommendation to approve the Civic Hall Wayne County Foundation grant.
Do I hear a motion to accept the consent items as presented? Aaron Stevens makes the motion, and Jeff Slifer seconds the motion. Are there any comments or questions on the consent items? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have a second public commentary. Would our one public person out there like to speak? No? Okay. Follow up on old business. Do you have any old business?
That's what we've been doing much of the evening.
Okay, then we'll move on to superintendent and board reports, reflections, and celebrations.
Well, I'd like to begin by thanking board members, and correct me if I'm missing anyone. I know that you attended Challenge Day last week. Pat did, Linda did, Dixie. Suzanne, were you
No,
there?
I wasn't able
Okay,
to.
I-
And I'm regretting it.
Misty and Bob.
Well, if you
Bob,
recall,
yeah.
I think the last time we met as a board, though, you had commented on it. Some of you were kind of tired that day.
Yes, we will.
And I decided there had to be something to that, so I cleared my calendar and I went the next day, and it was outstanding. And I just want to give the highest praise to Leslie Bolser and her students for taking the initiative to put this on, because I think there have been some significant changes. I asked yesterday during I don't know what they called that, kind of like a reunion of the Challenge Day participants. I asked some of the students in my particular group if they'd noticed changes at the high school, and they noted there have been changes at the high school. And I said, well, exactly what are those? And they weren't sure, which led me to believe that it was the change in themselves about how they perceive high school. If we can connect that kind of change to every student at Richmond High School, imagine the change in the high school that would take place. And I think we have to be very supportive of those students and the people over there to make it happen again, if that's what they choose to see.
I was not able to attend the meeting yesterday afternoon. How are they going to follow up? Is that what they discussed?
They did discuss that. And Pat, did you bring the list in with you?
Well, yes, but can I find it quickly? Probably not. Let me look.
They hope to do, well, they got together and in groups and brainstormed the kinds of things that they might want to do. And I think they said they hope to do two follow-ups.
There's a list.
Yep,
don't have to
this
read the
year.
whole list.
Yet this year, right.
That's great. Good.
Mini challenge days, making posters, creating a Facebook group, of course. Go to the middle schools.
Mentors.
Yeah. Have a discrimination policy, have little challenge days every month. Post a link about it on the RCS website. Make PSAs. So there were a number of things that appear to be very practical and doable.
Any other celebrations, comments?
Yes, I've got one. Randy Eckert and his choirs and the performance they had 2 weeks ago with Ball State University singers. Third year in a row that Jeff Thorne has brought in. He's brought in, a Purdue choir and an IU choir. This was a time he got to bring in a professional choir and the Ball State singers. For us Ball State alumni.
It's nice to see they could sing.
That was a look.
But it was an outstanding job, and every time I see those people perform, I just bust with pride. They do a wonderful job.
Aaron, did you have something you wanted to comment?
Just wanted to, I have a copy here of the 2012 Indiana General Assembly selected education-related bills that passed recently that I received at the regional dinner. And it's everything from financial disclosures of elected officials to fiscal matters and all of the things pertaining to school boards, and a lot of good things, as well as information on some proposed legislation that did not pass. And if any of the board members would like some, I'll leave it with Pam
love that.
and
Yeah.
see if we can make copies.
Email it
for
out
everyone.
to us.
Maybe
Because
that'll
I,
be in your update this week.
yeah,
Okay.
because I noticed in the Star this week that they said Indiana, the grading of the schools was going to be delayed. Did you notice that? The letter grades that will be assigned to schools, and I was going to ask that question because it appeared in the Star, so.
We're assuming it's still on.
Okay. We'll check that and see what, I cut it out.
There is also something interesting in here in regards to the multiple count days, the ADM days, and the school finance for that as well. So probably great interest to everyone here.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't want to keep people too long, but I'm going to mention a future celebration on April 10th. We just want to mention that we're going to have Kindergarten Rocks. And it's an effort to engage parents and their children to our kindergarten program. And we have some unique things. The students will be provided a free book bag with a number of items, alphabet cards, number things that they can work on. So we're excited about that. Mrs. Andrews, Bridget Hazelbaker has been working on that, and a number of community organizations will be there. Immunizations will be available for students. And this week I reported this on Joy in Our Town. I would mention that Kelly wouldn't speak tonight, but she was there with some of our parents Brian was also there, reporting on parent participation in our schools. Made a nice presentation for Richmond schools.
When was
and it was this week. It won't appear for a few more weeks on Joy in Our Town on the TV program, TBN. So thank them for that participation.
You know what, there has been another milestone hit that you need to know about. Sally Porter notified us yesterday that the 23 students, that's all this is accounting for, 23 students in our graduating class this year have jointly received $1.98 million in scholarships.
Oh, that's great news.
Almost $2 million.
That's not all the others.
To 23 students.
Write that down, Brian. That's very exciting.
It
And they're
was-
still coming in, I would think.
Oh, this doesn't account for
Right,
for
'cause-
most of
Right.
the scholarships coming.
Aisha Bowen hadn't gone to the Coca-Cola one yet.
Okay. Good meeting. Thank
Bet-
you.
I bet that.